Congressman Hakeem Jeffries sits on the House Judiciary Committee, and more importantly these days, he's the party guy in the House majority. He is chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman, thank you for coming on. How do you think you are going to decide whether or not to pursue impeachment, and is one way to just proceed with hearings that are, except for the title, impeachment hearings, but in name only?
Well, Speaker Nancy Pelosi has laid out a clear standard for how to proceed, and it's a standard that the overwhelming majority of the House Democratic Caucus embraces. That is, that the case for impeachment must be compelling, the evidence must be overwhelming, and public sentiment around impeachment must be bipartisan in nature. So we're going to go down the course where we will gather the necessary evidence so that we can then evaluate it and present it to the American people. First, we want access to the entire Mueller report, not the redacted version, because the Attorney General cannot be trusted to provide an accurate portrayal to the American people, and who knows whether the redactions were legitimate or not. Second, we want the underlying documentation connected to the Mueller report. Third, we want to make sure that Bob Mueller testifies before the House Judiciary Committee so he can tell his story to the American people. Once we have gone down that road, then we can evaluate where we stand in terms of the best way to proceed.
You have a new left flank, however, within your caucus, as I don't need to remind you, some of it New York-based, some of it freshman-based, that is going to say to you, what more are you waiting to learn about obstruction? What magic document is going to leap out of the Mueller material before you proceed?
Well, there are 10 instances that are very troubling that have been laid out in the Mueller report as it relates to obstruction of justice. It's now the Judiciary Committee's responsibility to evaluate each and every one of those instances, as well as other information that may be presented. We are united behind the principle that the House is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We're united behind the principle that we don't work for Donald Trump, we work for the American people, and we have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. Donald Trump right now is out of control. We want to present those facts to the American people, and then we can proceed. Jerry Nadler has said we're going to look at abuse of power, we're going to look at the culture of corruption and its cost on the American people, and we're going to look at obstruction of justice. That's the starting point for our journey.
Well, let me take the other side and ask you about the White House argument. What do you intend to learn from Don McGahn that didn't come out during 30-plus hours of testimony before the best in the business, the investigators who worked for Bob Mueller?
Well, I think it's important for him to tell his story fully to the American people. Live testimony where he can be cross-examined by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and asked probative questions about the nature of working in this White House, the culture of corruption that we believe existed, Donald Trump's intentionality in terms of obstructing justice and the possibility of abuse of power. And then the American people can evaluate for themselves whether there is a troubling situation that's festering at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that we'll collectively need to address.
Against the unmistakable backdrop of McCarran Airport and the MGM Grand telling us that you're lucky enough to be in Las Vegas, the Democrat from the state and city of New York, Hakeem Jeffries. Thank you, Congressman, very much for being on with us tonight from Las Vegas.